Hey there, fiber friends. Sarah here, coming to you from my spinning wheel, getting ready to embark on yarn number 4 of 23 yarns in 2023. Now for this one, I actually did a total dive through my spinning fiber stash. I knew that what I was feeling to spin next was my default yarn, something that I could spin just easy with a long backwards draft. I'm going to wind it off onto my ball winder and 2-ply it so that I have no leftover singles. And I don't want to worry about color management or really much of anything when I'm doing this spin. So with that in mind, I pulled 2 different fibers from my stash to choose from. And both of them are Hedgehog fiber clubs. Hedgehog Fibres does a mystery yarn club it's like a 3-month thing, and it comes out maybe twice a year. And that is, to my knowledge, the only time that you can also get your hands on fiber. And so maybe like 4 years ago, I signed up for the fiber club and got 3 lovely put-ups of combed top and threw them right into my fiber stash and never looked at them again, really. There is a 3rd blue one on the bed over here that I'm saving for something really special because I love it. But today my choice was going to be between these 2. This one here is 50% baby camel, 50% merino wool. It is gorgeous how soft it is. Unlike that yarn number 1 that I spun, which had some camel in it, but the camel was very distinct, in my opinion, throughout. This looks like a very homogeneous blend. You know, I don't see really much difference between what would be the camel fiber or the merino fiber, so it's extremely well blended. And it's sort of like a grandma's lipstick pink, with shots of color throughout. So it's got a green spot and a blue spot. So just some shots of color throughout on a majority sort of dusty pink fiber. The other bag is 100% merino wool. And this one here looks like it may have been blended a little bit after it was dyed. I mean, maybe not, but I can't see how they got these streaks of the black inside the fiber. See how you got like streaks of the black? So I think it was dyed and then blended, possibly. Or the black just was blended in, like it could have been black fiber blended with the white and then dyed, and then you would get the black and the blue wouldn't sort of show over the top of the... Anyways, I'm just hypothesizing how this was done, but it's super gorgeous. And they actually play really nicely together. So despite my desire to just be able to not worry about singles management and ply from both ends of a center pole ball, I did sample what these would look like plied together. So here's that sample of the 2 plied against each other, and it is really nice, but I backed off. I decided that I didn't want something quite so barber poled, and so I'm going to save the merino camel blend for later, because I think this one I might want to run through my drum carder to get rid of the splotches of color. So this is going to be a later project. I decided I am going to spin this 100% merino. There's 125 grams of it, and it should make a nice dark yarn with a lot of character and, you know, little bits of color throughout, because that's sort of the other half of this sample is just the black on black. So your default spin is sort of the spin that you naturally want to do. If you were to pick up 500 grams of fiber and not think and just spin, you would settle into a rhythm and produce a yarn pretty consistently. That's sort of what you naturally want to do. And I love my default yarn. It's a super knittable, approximating DK to worsted weight. It's fairly even, and it is a fast spin, and I'm an instant gratification spinner, so that's what I love. So I'm going to make a 2-ply from a center pull ball with a long sort of backwards draft. This is combed top, and like I've said before, my opinion is the fiber prep more than the spinning style will determine your finished yarn. So we'll be in sort of a worsted, semi-worsted kind of place with this fiber. Now, because my brain immediately wants to think of ideas of what I might use this for, one skein could easily be a hat or some mitts, but I love knitting sweaters and I love knitting color work. And one particular sweater that has been on my radar lately is the Sheep Camp sweater by Jennifer Berg, and I've got a picture of it here. And I think that this fiber here would do a wonderful job of color work for the yoke. Now, I could pair this with commercial yarn from my stash or that I purchase, but just in case I feel like doing more spinning rather than less, I do have 200 grams of this Blue-Faced Leicester oatmeal color top, and I think I'd get a subtle but sufficient amount of contrast between these two if I wanted to go that route. 200 grams probably not enough for the main color for a whole sweater for me, but this oatmeal BFL is pretty easy to find more of. I've had different lots of this over the years, and they've all produced a very similar color yarn. The color in this fiber is from blending very evenly the brown natural fleece color and the white natural fleece color of BFL Sheep. There are preps that do a less even blend, and then you get a more mottled yarn. So this could be an option, and certainly an easier option because being combed top, this would be ready to spin directly. An option I like even better, just because this sweater is called the Sheep Camp sweater, would be this here. And I've got 3 very crinkly bags. This one I think I have stolen fiber from at some point, because it definitely, oh no, you know what, it says 70 grams. I'll have to weigh these. Anyways, I've got 200 gram bags and one maybe 70 gram bag. And what this is it's raw fleece that has been washed and then destashed. And it's rambouillet. And just look at how spongy this fiber is. Looks like this sheep was a multicolored sheep because I've got brown sections and white. You can see in the bag. And rambouillet is very, very, very similar to merino. Now, we might need to fact check this because I'm going off the top of my head from what I recall. But merino being, I believe, Spanish, the deal was that you had to have like royal permits. Not now, currently, but back in the day, only certain people could have merino sheep. It was the royal sheep. Rambouillet was something that was bred up to approximate merino as closely as possible without actually being the royal sheep. And here in Canada, there happens to be a ton of rambouillet. I think it's the most common fine wool sheep that you'll find in Canada. And so this is rambouillet fleece. And it's just like, look at the crimp and how spongy and just how wonderful this fiber is. Just super gorgeous. It would need to be blended because I don't want to have chunks of white and chunks of brown. But that's a consideration for a different yarn. Just wanted to share with you where my brain goes when I have fiber like this to hold and squish. It's not even spun up yet, but I'm already planning out additional spins and a sweater project. So maybe that's where this goes, but for now, a default yarn spin. All right, so I have that fiber, and on my bobbin, if you can see, I've got some of it spun up already. I have been timing myself on this spin. So I've spun for 1 hour and 30 minutes so far, and of the 125 grams in this roving, I have 63 left. So I'm basically right at the halfway mark. in an hour and a half. So hopefully the whole spin should be 3 hours, right? I've come into a nice rhythm with a long, easy backwards draft, which is my preferred default yarn. And I'm going to go ahead and show you some of that spinning now. So let's bring the camera in closer so that we can see more of what I am doing with this spin. And of course, my single is wound right onto the bobbin. So let's get going. So just join in. And then, like I said, I've been spinning with a long supported backwards draft. Let's get in the hang of things here. Coming all the way back to my hip and letting the fiber go on. So I'm letting twist come right into my fiber and drafting long backwards. Just using my front hand to support things and provide a little bit of tension against the drafting so that I get a consistent single. And I'm spinning from the full width of my roving. I haven't split it down. And I don't know if you noticed there, but that little section of drafting, I started over at this side and I slowly, started over at this side and I slowly worked across my fiber. And then what I do is I just flip and work back the other way. So just a lot of this in the spinning. This fiber is drafting very wonderfully. For 100% merino, it's not too slick. You know, dyeing the fiber can sometimes put a tiny bit of a felt into the fiber, which can aid actually in the spinning. Just a tiny bit more cohesion between adjacent fibers, right? Sometimes really fresh, slick merino slivers can be even a little bit difficult to spin because they just want to slip right out of your hands. It's a shorter staple length on merino and a finer crimp, and they just can be a little bit slick sometimes, but this is just really lovely to spin and hasn't been causing me too much grief. I have, if you take a look at the bobbin, I'm getting darker sections and lighter sections on this, which is sort of changing up my potential plan for what I'm going to spin this fiber into, which is sort of changing up my plan for what I might pair this with for knitting color work potentially with it, because it might be too mottled to have any definition against a gray. So I might have to go against a very light main color in order for this final yarn to pop. But we'll see more once I apply it together and swatch with the final yarn. But for now, I'm just spinning these singles. And enjoying the process. I've been watching some YouTube while I spin. I think I've mentioned them in another video, but you want to check out Seam Stressed if you're at all into chaotic but amazing sewing projects. Recreation of like red carpet gowns, some cosplay. Definitely check out Seam Stressed. Been watching them while I spin. Actually, well, I do all kinds of crafting. You know when you find a new YouTuber and you just immediately go down a rabbit hole and watch all of their back catalog of videos? So there's been a lot of that going on. When I sat down to spin today, I was watching the Wool Needle Hands podcast. She's talking about a cabled sweater that she's trying to knit flat and some of the challenges that she's facing with that. Trying to think if there's anyone else new that I've discovered. No, that's about it. A lot of seems stressed lately. Check them out. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and put YouTube back on my phone and set my timer again so that I can see if I can truly spin this whole braid of fiber in just under 3 hours. So there's my bobbin. That's 125 grams less this one little piece here that I pulled out to keep. And that took me another hour and 5 minutes. So that puts us at 2 hours, 35 minutes for the whole 125 gram spin using sort of my default drafting style. So I'm going to go ahead and wind this off on my ball winder so that I can ply from both ends of a cake. I kept this little section of the lighter sort of dusty pink that was in here because I think that this color makes a beautiful contrast with this yarn. So scrap the original ideas I had for spinning up some Rambouillet fleece. I think that I need to go in search of or dyeing myself a yarn or fiber in this color for the contrast. What do you think? I am plying from a center pole. I don't recommend doing this if you have a half functional ball winder like I do. The ball winder sort of slipped the yarn up out of the cake many times, so I've got all kinds of tangles, but we're managing. What I'm having to do is sort of pull some of the inside out of the bottom of the cake while I pull from the top, and that's to avoid getting caught on all of these sort of tangles that are sticking out of the middle, if that makes any sense. Anyways, I'm managing. It looks like a tangled mess, but it's actually just the kinks from the single. So as long as you sort of manage, you will succeed, even with a poorly wound cake. It's not normally like this. Anyways, let me aim my camera a little bit better. So I've got some of it plied up on my bobbin here already, and I'm just sitting my ball in my lap. Like I said, I've pulled the center out, and I am making sure that the outside yarn is pulling sort of from this side and the centerpiece is coming over this way, and that will prevent the two ends from wrapping around each other as you go. And I'm just keeping this you know, sort of what you pull out of the center pole cake over here, and keeping some tension on this outside one so that none of the super coils, like where the yarn spirals back on itself, enter into the 2-ply. And managing my plying and the tangles. It's a little bit more frustrating than it usually is because this cake wound so poorly. It's probably one of those things I need to invest in a better quality ball winder. Sometimes when you're plying from both ends, because you're kind of plying in the direction you spun, you can sometimes end up like so. This single here has a section wrapped around the outside, and this happened. So you have to watch out for that. But you can just sort of accumulate some twist, manage that into the yarn, and once I give this yarn a kind of hard finish, the little bit of felting that comes with a hard finish will take care of holding that in place. Just something to watch for. It happens when you're plying sometimes, especially if you're not plying opposite to the direction that you spun. So like when you ply onto a bobbin and then, when you spin onto a bobbin and then ply off the bobbin, you're plying opposite to the direction that you spun the yarn. So when you spin the yarn, you think of, you know, all of your fibers are aligned this way. And when you ply, you end up plying from the opposite direction. So you don't get sort of the starting points where fibers enter in. I don't know. I'm kind of just rambling along here as I spin. I'll probably edit a bunch of that out. Anyways, just relatively boring footage of me managing tangles and plying. I've finished all of that I had pulled out of the center of my cake here. And since I don't want to keep pulling from here, because I'll twist around these tangles that are poking out, I'm just going to reach into the center of my cake and try and pull out another sort of nugget of yarn from in there. This is the same sort of mess that you can get into sometimes when you center pull from a cake or from a like a bullet skein of yarn. Oh no, there we go. All right, so I pulled some of the center out so that I'm not going to continue tangling things worse down at this end, and I can get back to plying for a bit. So just doing that as I go along here. I swear that it's not usually this bad and tangled when I ply from both ends of a cake here. All right, so long story short, plying that yarn was a tangled mess, but I persevered. I only had to break my single to untangle something one time, and I've got a full bobbin of 2-ply yarn ready to wind off and finish.
One eternity later.
All right, so big time jump here, big difference in appearance. I checked back and I actually finished spinning all of that yarn the day before I went for my mammogram ultrasound that revealed that I had breast cancer. So if you are hearing about that for the first time right now, I'll pop up a link somewhere up above my head to the playlist going over my cancer diagnosis and my journey with that. So yeah, finished spinning this yarn back on March 14th. And today is May 30th, so it's been a minute, but a lot has happened. I have finished this yarn. I gave it a good hard finish in hot water with some soak in the sink and then hung it to dry outside. It turned out super squishy and lovely. Sorry, bear with me, my mouth doesn't agree with anything right now because of chemo. So the yarn finished at 238 yards in that 125 grams. So I would put it at a light worsted heavy DK weight. And in this video early on, I did have ambitious plans for spinning a contrasting color from prepared top, spinning it from those Rambouillet locks, potentially trying to dye up a yarn or a fiber to be the perfect contrast for this. And those were all from the ambitious place that I was in, again, prior to cancer. I do still want to cast on basically right away that sheep camp sweater. And so I dug through my stash to see what I might have had on hand. And I've got 4 skeins of this guy, which I think makes a really nice contrast with this yarn. Got one opened up here. This is yarn that I have dyed myself on my period. This is yarn that I dyed myself on my periodic table of yarn base. I probably dyed these skeins sometime greater than 2 years ago. So it's been sitting around. I've got 4 skeins, like I said. This is DK weight. It's about 144 yards in 100 grams. So it is a little bit finer than my contrast here. I don't think it's enough of a difference to cause any problems in the knit. And like I said, I've got 4 skeins of this, which should be perfect. Plenty enough for that sheep camp sweater that I want to knit. So the 2 together should work out nicely. Not sure what else to say about this project right now, except that I'm going to cake this yarn up today, cake this yarn up today, and knit myself a swatch. So that's it for my default yarn. I do have another spin underway right now with some roll eggs that I made on my blending board here on this channel. I'll link that up here. So that'll probably be the next spinning video you see from me. Like I said, Cancer, so things are a little bit more sporadic than I would have loved them to be this year. But thanks for sticking around. I hope that this was enjoyable as far as one of my spinning videos go. That's all I got for you now. Happy spinning, and I'm going to go start some happy knitting.